Hey guys, welcome to another video, and today we're checking out this Logic remote for Logic. I have the iPad connected to the Mac via USB, and I'm capturing the Logic remote from the iPad using this QuickTime player set up in Record to capture the iPad as the source. Okay, so this is my desktop mouse I'm moving now, and if I use this to point to anything on the overlay to point you to a feature of the Logic remote, this QuickTime player record thing will appear, but don't worry about that. Okay, so this is Logic remote, and there's Logic open behind it. Okay, now currently we're in the mixer view. This is the mixer. There's this grey block here covering 8 channels, and I can drag that with my finger to go up and down the mixer to zone in on any block of channels I want, like that. And then I can touch on the title blocks at the bottom to switch channel. And as I do, it selects that channel on the Logic remote, and the accompanying channel in Logic is automatically selected as well, track and channel in Logic. So if I choose on the Logic remote this first track, Modern Club, then Logic switches to that in the track column here. Okay, so there's the mixer, which you can kind of say is the default view. Now you've got different views for the mixer. You've got volume, which just gives you big faders. They're very smooth, very easy to move. They'd be good for writing in automation for volume. Otherwise I'm not that convinced by the mixer's usefulness, but we'll come to that. So you've got the big faders, and at the top you've got mute, solo, record enable, and you've got all your automation stuff. Right? You can switch to pan and volume, and it just brings in pan controls for every single track. Double tap to reset the pan like that, or the fader. Double tap to set to 0. Okay, then we've got our audio effects. That's plugin effects, 1 to 8, and then if there are any channels that have got more than 8 plugins on, you can go to audio effects 9 to 15. Then you've got your sends, 1 to 4, and if any channel in the mix has got more than 4 sends, you'll see a second button here, sends 5 to 8. Okay. So yeah, audio plugins 1 to 8, 9 to 16, and sends 1 to 4, 5 to 8. You've got MIDI effects and your in-outs. Now let's look at the audio effects now. Now with the plugins here like that, I can, let's choose say this channel and track. If I touch on the channel EQ at the top, I can do open plugin, and I get that type of display. You only get a graphic display for the EQ. All the nodes for the different bands are down at the bottom. They're not across the display up here, although if you touch up there you're dragging as well. So you choose a node, adjust the frequency, drag up to gain, up and down to down, and you can adjust the Q by dragging on it on the highlighted block, or you can pinch. Oh come on. You can pinch to adjust the Q, etc. So that's your EQ. Right. If I go to the second plugin on the selected track, the compressor, open it. With all the other plugins other than the EQ, you get this parameters view. You don't get the graphic look. Okay. All plugins other than EQ give you this type of view. Right. Now, if I tap on any installed plugin, such as the compressor, the second plugin on the selected track here, you see the menu coming off it with the arrow pointing to it, and it's slightly greyed down there, so we know that that's the particular plugin slot. I can open the plugin, I can bypass the plugin, and now I've bypassed it. How do I activate it again? Oh, there you go. It disappears, for God's sake. That's a bit of a bug. Yeah, so I can bypass it here. I can choose a preset for it from settings. These are all the same presets that you'll get on your desktop Logic. Or I can change it to a different plugin with choose plugin and switch to a completely different plugin, and these are arranged in exactly the same order as all your plugins are on your regular Logic. And I can copy the settings of that compressor or any other plugin with copy. Then I can go to this track here, and in the third slot, tap the third empty slot and paste in that compressor, and it'll have exactly the same settings as this one here that I just copied. Exactly the same, like that. Okay. On an empty slot, if if I go back to this channel here, let's select that compressor I just pasted in. I can remove it with remove plugin at the bottom, it's gone. I can touch the bottom empty slot, the third one down, and choose a plugin from the get-go here, etc. Okay. All right. Now, the sends, all you can do is adjust the send amount. You can't tap on an empty slot and install a send, and you can't make them pre or post fade or anything like that. All you can do is adjust the send amount. Now the MIDI effects are similar to the plugin effects. There's an arpeggiator on this track. I can tap it, open it, and tweak it. Or I can tap it, choose a setting for it. These are the same menu items as for the arpeggiator in Logic, obviously. Right. Or I can change it to a different plugin, MIDI plugin, choose plugin, switch it to a different one. Right. And bypass it here. And that's all the same with an empty slot. So below that arpeggiator, in the next slot down, touch it. I can choose the plugin from the get-go and then do all the other things. Choose a preset, etc. And I can also copy and paste. So if I choose the chord trigger from there, I can copy it. I can go to this track here, select the top empty slot, paste it in. It will paste the chord trigger in with the same settings. Or I can remove that. All right. Let's turn that one on. Oh. Let's bypass that and get rid of that. Okay, so that's your MIDI effects. Now there's one other thing. Let's go back to audio effects, say. And let's say I go to this track and I choose the compressor. Open it. There's my compressor settings. Now when you've got either a plug-in audio effect or a MIDI effect open for editing here, this grey little edge thing appears there, and if you drag that across you get a little channel strip, little inspector column for the selected track you're working on. And this is quite useful because you get instant access to your volume, your pan, yeah, double click to reset, your mute solo, your automation and your record enable. But you've got the slot there for all your plugins, MIDI and audio. You can add new ones in here, change them, do all the same things. So there we're looking at the compressor settings, and it's got two dots at the bottom because it's got 2 pages. I can slide across to the next set of parameters. But I can quickly jump to the ensemble. There's the ensemble settings. There's the chorus settings. There's the ring shifter settings. There's 2 pages for that. There's the stereo delay. There's 2 pages of settings for that. There's the compressor. 2 pages of settings. Yeah, any of these can be turned off and on there. I can go to the slot there and bypass the plugin, which is easiest to do it there like that with the button to the left of the title of the plugin. I can copy and paste. I can go to my settings here and install a different preset, etc., or change the plugin completely from here, or remove it completely. Okay. And with my MIDI effects, it's the same thing. There's the arpeggiator settings. That's got three pages of parameters. Look, but I can turn it on and off here. I can go to the menu. I can choose a different MIDI plugin for that slot. I can go and load a preset. I can remove it completely. I can copy paste, etc. Now once you've slidden in this side panel like that, you can't change to a different track. You're stuck on that track. Okay. Slide it out of the way. It's locked up now, so every time it locks up, it keeps on locking up, and I have to use this back arrow there to step out. It won't let me slide that panel across and out of view now. So step with that and it's gone. Okay, so you select tracks by tapping on the title at the bottom, the coloured block. It selects the track in the Logic Remote and it selects the accompanying track in Logic. Okay, that's your mixer, basically. And you've got your main master fader here on the right. Double click to reset. You've got a mute and you've got a handy dim, actually, that's quite useful. You can reset mutes. If you've got things soloed, you can clear your solos and recall them like that, whatever you like. Okay, that's your mixer. Scroll up and down to get to the different blocks of channels. Okay, that's your mixer. Now, up here, that tray is the library to load channel strip presets, and this is your views for the Logic Remote, that arrow. So we touch that, and we can see we're in mixer. But the 2 views above it are smart controls and, in this case, keyboard, and chord strips. At the moment, it says chord strips. Now let's look at this top one, smart controls and. At the moment it says keyboard because the track we've got selected is a synth or keyboard instrument. So I can choose smart controls and keyboard, and I get the smart controls at the top and a keyboard underneath to play the instrument. Right? But if we go to a different instrument like this drum machine here, now it's called smart controls and drum pads. Smart controls at the top, drum pads at the bottom to play the instrument. So this first menu, this first view, smart controls and, will give you smart controls and drum pads underneath for any drum instrument, smart controls and keys underneath for any synth or keyboard type instrument, and if it's a guitar or something, let's go back to the mixer. If it's an acoustic guitar, for example, like that, now it gives me smart controls and fretboard, etc. Okay, now just to show you, there's the title of the selected track. Above it is the beats and bars indicator. There's an arrow to the left that steps you up the tracks, and the arrow on the right steps you down the track. So if I use these arrows here and here, I can switch now. That's now the bass instrument. So again, the display is called smart controls and fretboard because it's a guitar type instrument, and I get a bass fretboard underneath to play with and the smart controls at the top. Yeah. So smart controls and gives you either a fretboard or keys underneath or drum pads underneath depending on the instrument. But when it's a pitched instrument, whether it's frets, you can set up the frets to be any scale you want. If it's, oh, it's crashed again, it keeps doing that. Sometimes it won't reconnect. Yeah, it hasn't reconnected, has it? Look, oh my god, it just keeps on doing this. And there's no way out of it. Are we back? Yeah, we're back. Okay. So, where was I? So, at the moment we're on a drum track, so smart controls and drum pads. Then I'm going to go to, that's also drums, that's also drums. Now let's go down to the bottom. I'm using the arrow I'm using this arrow here to step down the tracks. All right. Let's go down the bottom. And there's an analog polysynth. Keys at the bottom, right? Smart control and keyboard. Okay, now, whether it's a fret display underneath the smart controls or a keyboard display underneath, you've got this scale thing to set the keys or the frets to any scale you want. In the case of keyboards underneath in the display, you can change to different size keys, and you can also turn the arpeggiator on and off. You can't edit the arpeggiator from here, but you can turn it on and off. Now you've also got this display here that by default says glissando. So with it set to the glissando, if I touch a key and then scroll up while still pressing down, it does glissandos up and down the keys. But if I switch it to scroll, if I press and hold a key and drag left right, it'll move the whole keyboard. Or if I set it to pitch and press and hold a key, it'll do, and then move it around, it sort of morphs between the notes. Like that, which is quite cool. There's your sustain switch, which will, just tap a key and it will just keep playing. There's your octaves. Etc. Right? Okay. So that's what you get with a keyboard type instrument. Smart controls at the top, keys at the bottom. Here is a alchemy instrument, same thing, keys at the bottom, but you get the alchemy display on 2 pages at the top. There's your XY pad and more performance controls, and there is your transformer pads. This is a regular synth, which for some reason won't play, I don't know why. This is strings. So now, because it's a string instrument, we get smart controls and fretboard again. Step up, tech bass, keyboard, guitar, bass, keyboard, 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 keyboard. Now we come to drums. This is an drum machine designer on an instrument track, so we get smart control and drum pads, and they trigger instant, right? If I choose this track, this is an acoustic drummer kit. Now sadly we don't get the drummer display, so from this Logic remote we can't edit these drummer patterns. All we get is smart controls and drum pads, and we're tapping the acoustic drums. For some reason, if you select a drummer track, it only gives you that, as if you have got a drum instrument on a regular MIDI instrument track. But you don't get the drummer editor, so it's impossible to edit drummer patterns from this remote, which seems to me a bit pointless. Now we step up to this drum track. This is a regular drum instrument on an instrument track. So again, we get smart control and drum pads. And finally, step up to the first track. It's an ultra beat type drum machine. So again, smart controls at the top, pads at the bottom. Okay, so that's your smart controls, and with smart controls across the top and something to play the instrument on the bottom, either a fretboard display, keys, or pads. Now that leaves this second display, which currently says drum pads. Again, that changes depending on the type of track you've got selected. I've got an electronic drum kit selected, so it's drum pads. This now gives me the pads, but with no smart controls above. So I've got access to all my pads in banks. There's the second bank, etc. Right? Switch to this. This is an acoustic kit on an instrument track. So now it says drum kit. And I can bash out patterns. Now if I step to After Party, this is a drum machine designer, again, drum pads. Right? Okay, but if I step to any pitched instrument, I get these chord strips I can now switch to. So pitched instrument gives us chord strips. In the case of any keyboard type synth, they look like this. But if we go to a bass, they look like that, and if we go to a guitar, they look like that. Now let's go down to, and strings, they can look slightly different depending on the strings. There's the analog polysynth. Now these chord strips you can go to. For pitched instruments, they look like this, unless they're strings, either guitars, basses, or actual strings. Right. These chord strips can be edited with the cogwheel there. Edit chords at the bottom, right? Edit chords. And I can make these any chords I want. So I could go C minor 6, C minor, major 7, etc. You can make them any chords you want, right? And you set up the chords that you want, and then you tap, or tap and hold, press and hold, and it's velocity sensitive, and whatever chord you've set up for each strip, you can play it in any of the positions working down the octaves, and the last 3 grey are bass end notes, single bass end notes. So on the F I can go, etc. Right? I can hold down a chord on F and play around with the bass notes on any of the other ones, like etc. Right? That's what the chord strips look like for a regular synth, and it's really cool this, because you can easy to play chords. All right. If I switch to the smart strings, look like that. I'll come to those in a minute. These are an acoustic guitar chord strips. Now it's slightly different. Again, you can edit those chords to be any chords you want. But the way this works is slightly different. I tap at the top on any of these arrow areas above the high string, and I get a quick struck chord. Like that. But I can actually strum up and down on the string, starting and ending on any string I want at any speed. Now for bass, the chord strips are slightly different. Again, you can edit these to be any chords you want, but you can't tap at the top and hear a bass chord. What you do is you set up the chords you want for each tab, each strip, and then the notes, the 4 bass string notes, will be notes of the chord F, or of C, or D minor, whatever. So I can then go. That kind of thing, right? Okay, you can do all that. Okay. Now, just to show you, where's that string instrument? With strings, you normally get, let's change it to a different preset, string ensemble. Right. Regular strings, right? You tap, you know, set the chords up you want, and you work down the octaves, root notes or bass notes at the bottom. So etc. And you can hold down a chord while playing bass notes, the grey notes from other chords, right? Regular strings look like that, and if you bring in the sustain and just tap it, it'll hold that string chord until you tap something else, or like that, right? But there is one strings, and I'm going to the library to load different presets onto the selected track library. If I choose smart strings, and these are in orchestral strings, smart strings, somebody on the discussion comments on YouTube gave me a heads up to this. If you choose smart strings, you get this display a bit like the strings in GarageBand for iPad, but it just doesn't work as well. Because it doesn't work, you can't have the entire string section just playing sustain. You have to bring in the smart controls in Logic, go to key switches, and it's always defaulted to the first violin legato, which means I'm tapping here, then here, then here, then here, and I'm getting different inversions of the C chord working down in pitch, but I don't get any of the bottom end of my string section because it's set to violin's legato, first violin's legato. I can tap like that, or I can drag up or drag down to do a swell up or a swell down, or I can press and hold and drag up and down at different speeds, and it's like I'm bowing the strings. But if I want to get the other bits of my string section in, I've got to go down here and use these switches. So if I switch to viola legato, I now start getting the viola bottom end coming in. Or cello legato, and I get the cellos coming in. Yeah? Or if I want the bottom end, then bass legato, and now I'll have but it doesn't really, it's not really working because now I'm only getting basses. Oh, here come the cellos. No. So it's very, very difficult to get the whole string section. Best thing is to use cello legato or viola legato. But you know, they're bringing things in and out. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of works, but it's nowhere near as good as the strings in GarageBand for iPad. But that you can get this display for the chord strips only on smart strings. All other strings, let's choose a different preset like string ensemble. Any other strings, you'll get the regular display, which works really well and has much better volume. Okay. So yeah, you got all that. And incidentally, if you switch to the studio strings, they will take some time to load up. Section Abbey Wood, for example, it's going to take some time to load this. Let's just move this out of the way, and I need to go to the actual instrument here and switch it to the string ensemble like that. Okay, there you go. Now I've got to wait for it to load. It does take ages to load. Come on, load, load, load. Come on, load. Still not. Come on. Still hasn't loaded. It's only loaded the bottom end. Come on. Right, it actually works quite well, this string ensemble, and you can use some of the key switches here, which are articulations. Now, the good thing about these strings is you, like all the other strings other than the smart strings, and the problem with the smart strings is you don't get this basic sustain patch, so you hear all the orchestra, all the sections, then you can take them in and out with the little pictures of the different string parts, like you can in GarageBand for iPad. But with this, it defaults to default sustain, so I can play, I arrange the chords I want, and then I play them down the different octave positions, and the grey notes at the bottom, the grey blocks at the bottom are the bass end, right? So yeah, but I can switch these. I can have tremolo. Yeah, I can have accented sustain. It gives more of an attack and then fades down a bit and sustains. Pianoforte slow. You get a strike, it backs off, it then comes back, raises up, swells up the volume and cuts. I can have pianoforte fast, etc. Spiccato. Staccato. Pizzicato. Yeah. Trill semi. Trill whole. But these don't work. Fall long. Doesn't work. Fall short. Doesn't work. Don't know why. And these don't work. The scoops and the crescendos don't work either. I don't know why they don't. Right, but it actually works reasonably well, the studio strings, with this chord thing. Okay. And you've always got the sustain, so you bring that in and then you touch a note, you know, touch a chord like C in any position or F in any position, up and down, and it will just keep playing it. Unless you press something else or unlatch sustain. etc. All right, that's your chord strips. They're different for different instruments, but they pretty much all look like you see it there with the white ladders. Unless you choose the smart strings, then you get those wooden ladders and slightly different features. Or any like bass guitar, you get the fret, you get the strings overlaid on the chord thing. Right? Okay, that's the chord strips. But for any other instruments like drums, let's do it this way. Let's go to the mixer, choose number 1. For drums, it's now going to be drum pads. Or for an acoustic kit, it's going to be drum kit, and you bash out drums like that. Okay. Alright, that's that. And then finally we've got these key commands. And the idea is you tap one, it does a key command, but really? I mean, down the bottom, we got some quite useful transport ones. Rewind, forward, stop, play, record, cycle mode. Yeah, they're quite useful. But how the hell are you going to remember the ones that you want here? Because it's page after page after page of them. And yeah, you can drag them around. If I go to edit key commands, I can now grab that one, drag it and replace it with punch out locator, and that will jump to there and that will jump up to there. But yeah, and I could touch one and I can remove it or set a different one in that place. But the idea that you're going to go to here and scroll around looking for the key command that you want, you can colour them any colour you want as well and give it a different colour, green, yellow, whatever. Right, but I don't know. I really don't know. So that's the key commands. Now there's a couple of other things. When you're in any view other than the mixer, you see this third icon appear there. That. Let's just move that out of the way. Close that. You see this third icon appear, and if you tap that, it brings in this sort of smart control upper row. Now, the only thing with this is I can't find any way to move these smart controls that are pre-installed, and it's the same no matter what kind of track you choose. The empty blocks, if I touch one, I go straight to editing. I can put in any key command I want in that empty block, and it says no, remove key command at the top. Well, what, remove key command from an empty block? But if I can't do it to any of the ones that are already there. There's nothing here, there's nothing like edit, right? If I touch one, it's doing the command. I can't edit it. There's no way to edit it. So I don't really understand that. I've looked in the manual. I can't find anything about that. How to change the ones that are here. It's obvious how to add ones you want into the empty blocks, but how you change the ones that are there, I don't know. Or how you decide which ones will be there from the get-go, I just can't see anything to do with that. Okay, the other thing is, let's hide that. You've also got this view. If you touch on the title here of the selected track, just touch it, it brings in the transport, rather the bars and beats thing. Now, if a cycle range exists, you can activate it here. But if there is no cycle range, you can't drag and create one, right? You can't. Okay. So cycle range, turn it on, and once it's on, I can touch it and adjust the end of the cycle range. So let's reduce that to 4 bars. Then I can drag it to be anywhere I want, but you can't drag and create one from the get-go, right? Now, one thing that is a bit thing is you think, why can't I move the playhead to start where I want to start, or hit play where I want to hit play, or hit record where I want to hit record? The way you do it is you drag the background. If I want to start playing at bar 33, I drag my background across until the playhead is over bar 33, hit play, and it'll play from bar 33. Like that. Or I drag to bar 33, put on my metronome, hit record, it will back up to bar 32, give me a 1 bar counting, that's the default, and begin recording at bar 33 on the selected track. And then it's into record, right? Okay. Undo. Yeah? So that's how you start from any position and activate the cycle range. But as I said, if there isn't a cycle range, if I was to go to regular logic here and get rid of the cycle range, there is no cycle range now, right? You can't, like in Logic, you can drag one like that. But you can't do that in GarageBand. There's no way to drag a cycle range. You've got to activate the cycle range that does exist, make it the length you want, and then drag it to where you want it to be. Like say bar 13 to bar 17. I've got a 4-bar cycle range there, right? Right, that's another thing. Okay, settings. You've got undo and redo, which for some reason are here. I don't understand why you've got to tap the settings wheel to get to undo redo when you could. There's plenty of space to put an undo button and a redo button there, right? But once you're in these settings here, you can create a new track, any track you like. You can duplicate the selected track. You can get into your tempo and signature from here, including tap tempo and all your timing, time signature and key signature and all that. There's adjustment for the velocity range here, which you can drag around and pinch and drag it smaller or wider. Like that's a bit fiddly, to be honest. Yeah, you got all that stuff. Okay. Anything else? Let's go back to the mixer. If I could choose that track there. Again, remember this tray is for your library to change any selected track to a different one, to load a different preset onto it. So I can go there, and there's all my channel strip presets in exactly the same categories as they are on Logic, right? If I go, I think I've got one audio track, don't I, here? No, well, let's make one, and it will appear under the track that's selected. So if I go, let's go across here to my very last track, which is the analog polysynth. There. Is that it? Hello? No. What's going on? Wait. Where's my analog polysynth? Where is it? There it is. Okay. So I've chosen the last track now, and these after it on the display here. These are all buses. It's a shame it hasn't given them different colours. Can I colour that? No, I don't see a way to do that. Is there some way to colour it the colour I want? No. Anyway, there's the last track selected. So now if I go to the main wheel here, new track, I can create an audio track underneath. Now there's an audio track. So now I go to the library, there's audio presets for voice, etc, etc. Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, you got, this is all your stuff. Yeah. I don't know, that smart controls. By the way, when it's an audio track, there's nothing on there. So let me go back to the mixer. With an audio track, let's put a plugin on. Let's put the channel EQ. Okay, there's a plugin now. So when you're in the views, if there's an audio track, you can choose smart controls. I have put a plugin, but what, you're telling me EQ doesn't count? No, it doesn't, clearly. So let's put another one. Let's put a compressor. Right now, any audio track, if I choose smart controls, it just gives me the smart controls. There's no smart controls and a keyboard or frets or something underneath to play it, because it's an audio track. So all you get is the smart controls. Below that, there's nothing to play the audio track because it's an audio track. And chord strips, well, that's just blank because it's an audio track and it just slides into the mixer instead. All right. So I think I've covered everything. I don't think there's anything I've missed particularly. Yeah, so that just begs the summary questions. Is it worth it? Well, if you've got an iPad already, yeah, it's free. It's free. I think the volume sliders, they're very, very smooth. These would be really cool to very smoothly draw in automation. And if you know anything about Logic, you can use the Quick Access Automation Controller to assign one controller to control any plug-in parameter you want on a track. So you could use the fader, slide it around and control any synth parameter or anything you want. But yeah, you know, these are good for doing automation. Yeah, but the pans, yeah, maybe, you know, yeah, I don't know if I'd actually use the mixer that much. And by the way, you double tap to reset the fader to 0, or double tap to reset the pan, etc. I don't know if I'd end up using the mixer that much, because a lot of the stuff you've got to do it with the mouse on your main Logic. So if you've got the mouse there, why would you put the mouse down and go, right, I'll go over here and adjust the volume? You wouldn't. You'd use the mouse, right? So I'm not sure I'd use the mixer that much, but the most useful things about it to me are the drum pads. They're good, and the smart controls are cool because it's pre-mapped for you, and you can use your hands. You haven't got to faff around assigning hardware controllers to different parameters. It's just automatically mapped. So the smart controls are pretty cool. The keyboard's pretty cool. You can set up any scales you want, etc., etc. Right? And these string fretboards are really good. But the best thing about it is the chord strips for all the different instruments, whether it's guitars, basses, strings, whatever, keyboards, pianos, etc. The chord strips are the best thing about this Logic Remote. For strings, for keyboards, particularly for the stringed instruments, etc., etc., they're really cool. So I like that bit. I like the smart controls and the little remote keyboard. I like the drum pads, but the mixer, I don't find it that useful, to be honest. I really don't. Okay. Anyway, there you go. But just to finish, but the thing that's missing is there's no drummer editor to edit drum regions, which is criminal. And what's the point of having the default, like on a drummer track, the kit appears for you to bash in a pattern with your fingers? Because what you want to do is be able to edit that drummer pattern. So there's no drummer editor. Then the other thing that really is the big missing item is the drum grid sequencer that you get in GarageBand for iPad. That drum grid sequencer is incredible, and why haven't they brought it to the Logic Remote to program your drums from a drum TR style grid sequencer? It's brilliant. The GarageBand for iPad drum grid sequencer thing is incredible, absolutely incredible. So if only they brought that to the table, and the drummer editor, then Logic Remote really would be starting to get properly featured. Okay, it's a freebie, you could argue, blah blah blah. But why don't they bring out, I don't know, a paid version that adds all those extra features? And I would like it to give us all the GarageBand for iPad content. I want all those vintage kits. I want all those hip-hop packs and everything like that. We don't get those in regular Logic. And they're great sounding kits and content. I don't know why we don't get those, but they're really good. Anyway, so there you go. That's Logic Remote. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. There it is. Don't think I've missed anything. See ya.